If you are a veteran rated at 90% right now, the Department of Veterans Affairs may owe you more than $19,000 a year that is not showing up in your bank account. Not a one-time check, every single month for the rest of your life. The gap between what a 90% veteran gets paid and what a 100% veteran gets paid is over $1,500 a month, and there is a legal way to collect that 100% payment without your rating ever reaching 100%. Most veterans never claim it. A lot of them have never even heard the name of the rule that makes it possible. I am a veteran. I am not a salesman, I am not a lawyer, and I am never going to ask you for a dime. I am going to do the thing nobody did for me, which is sit you down and explain the one rule the VA almost never spells out in plain English, because honestly, it costs them money when you understand it. So here's what I want you to hold on to for the next few minutes. There is a single form. Most veterans never file it. The VA will almost never say its name out loud to you. Your doctor is not going to bring it up at an appointment, and the rating decision letter you got in the mail did not walk you through it. Before we are done, I am going to tell you exactly what that form is called and exactly where it goes. Stay with me, because if you click away before that part, you are the one leaving the money on the table. Let me start with the number, because the number is the whole reason this matters. As of the current pay rates that took effect in December, a veteran rated at 90% with no dependents receives $2,362.30 a month. A veteran rated at 100% with no dependents receives $3,938.58 a month. Sit with those two numbers for a second. That is a difference of $1,576 every month. Over a full year, that is $18,915. And if you have a spouse, the gap is even bigger, because the 90% veteran with a spouse gets $2,559.30, while the 100% veteran with a spouse gets $4,158.17. That is $19,186 a year. Those are not my numbers. Those come straight off the va.gov compensation rate tables. You can look them up tonight. Now here's the part that makes veterans angry once they understand it, and you should be a little angry too. The VA does not require you to actually be rated 100% to receive that 100% payment. There is a separate path. It pays the exact same amount as a 100% rating, the same monthly check, but you can qualify for it while your combined rating on paper still says 70 or 80 or 90%. The name of that path is Total Disability Based on Individual Unemployability. Most people just call it by its initials, TDIU, or they call it unemployability. Write that phrase down, Total Disability Based on Individual Unemployability, because that phrase is the difference between the smaller check and the bigger check, and the VA almost never leads with it. Let me explain why this rule even exists, because once you understand the logic, you will understand whether it applies to you. The VA rating system is supposed to measure how much your service-connected conditions reduce your ability to earn a living. That is the entire point of the percentages. But the percentages are blunt. The VA admits in its own regulations that two veterans can have the exact same rating on paper, and yet one of them can still work and the other one genuinely cannot. So the rule makers built in a release valve. They said, if your service-connected disabilities make it so that you cannot hold down steady, gainful work, then we are going to pay you as if you are totally disabled, even if the math on your rating never gets you to 100. That release valve is unemployability, and it lives in the federal regulations at Title 38, Section 4.16. That is the actual law. Not a tip, not a loophole, not a rumor on a forum. It is written into the Code of Federal Regulations. Here is the first thing most veterans get wrong, and it is the thing that stops them from ever applying. They assume they do not qualify because their rating is not high enough. So let me give you the actual thresholds, straight from the regulation, because they are lower than you think. There are two doors into this benefit. The first door is for veterans who have one single service-connected disability. If you have one condition rated at 60% or higher, you meet the rating requirement. Just one condition at 60. The second door is for veterans with two or more conditions. If you have at least one condition rated at 40% or higher, and your combined rating is 70% or higher, you meet the requirement. People in the veteran community call that second one the 70-40 rule. One disability at 40 or more, combined rating at 70 or more. Let me make that real with an example, because this is where it clicks for people. Picture a veteran who came home with a bad back rated at 40%, ringing in the ears we call tinnitus at 10%, a knee at 20%, and post-traumatic stress at 30%. If you run that through the VA combined rating math, that veteran lands somewhere around 70% combined. He has got one condition at 40, the back, and a combined rating of 70. That means he walks straight through the second door. On paper, he is a 70% veteran. But if that back and that post-traumatic stress are the reason he cannot keep a job, he may be entitled to the 100% payment. That is almost $1,600 a month more than the 70% check he is cashing right now. Same veteran, same conditions. The only difference is whether he knows the rule and files the form. Think about how many veterans that covers. If you are sitting at 70% combined and you have got one condition at 40, you already meet the scheduler requirement for a benefit that pays at the 100% rate. You might be eligible for almost $1,600 a month more than you are getting, and you might be looking at your rating decision thinking you have to climb all the way to 100 to see that money. You do not. But, and this is the part you have to hear clearly, meeting the rating threshold is only half of it. The rating is the door. The second requirement is that you have to be unable to secure or follow what the VA calls substantially gainful employment because of your service-connected conditions. In plain English, your service-connected disabilities have to be the reason you cannot hold down a real job. Now, this is exactly where veterans talk themselves out of the money, so I need you to slow down with me here, because there are several myths buried in this part, and each one of them costs a veteran a fortune. The first myth is that if you have any job at all, if you earn any income whatsoever, you are automatically disqualified. That is not what the regulation says. The regulation has a concept called marginal employment, and marginal employment does not count against you. If your earned income is at or below the federal poverty threshold for one person, the VA considers that marginal, not substantially gainful. For reference, that poverty line for a single person sits at roughly $15,600 a year. So a veteran working part-time, picking up odd jobs, earning under that line can still qualify. There is even a provision for what the VA calls a protected work environment, like a family business or a sheltered job, where your employer carries you and makes special accommodations. Income from a setup like that can sometimes be treated as marginal, even when it is above that poverty line. I am not telling you to quit your job, and I am not your VSO. I am telling you that working a little does not automatically slam the door, no matter what somebody at the post hall told you 10 years ago. The second myth is that you are too old for this. A lot of older veterans assume that once they hit retirement age, unemployability is off the table, that it somehow turns into Social Security and disappears. As the rule stands today, age by itself is not supposed to be the deciding factor. The question is whether your service-connected conditions, not your age, are what keep you from working. Now I am going to come back to age in a minute, because something is changing on that front in Washington, and you need to hear it. The third myth is the one that breaks my heart the most, and it is this. A veteran files for a rating increase, gets denied, and decides the whole thing is hopeless and walks away. But a denied increase is not a denied unemployability claim. They are two different things. You can be denied a bump from 70 to 80 and still be a strong candidate for unemployability, because unemployability is not about the percentage, it is about whether you can work. Veterans give up at the exact moment they should be filing the one form that actually fits their situation. The fourth myth is that you have to be completely helpless, bedridden, unable to do anything to qualify. That is not the standard. The standard is whether you can hold substantially gainful employment, a real job that pays a real living. You can mow your own lawn, drive your own car, and still be unable to show up to a worksite 40 hours a week reliably because of your conditions. The VA is supposed to look at your actual ability to work, not whether you can microwave your own dinner. Therefore, the question is not just what is my rating, the question is two parts. Do I meet the 60 or the 70-40 rating threshold? And do my service-connected conditions keep me from holding substantially gainful work? If the answer to both is yes, you are looking at the bigger check. And there is a third door I do not want you to miss, because it catches the people who think they are out of luck. Even if you do not meet the 60% or the 70-40 threshold on paper, the regulation has a second paragraph. It says it is the established policy of the Department of Veterans Affairs that any veteran who cannot work because of service-connected disabilities should be rated totally disabled. Those cases get sent up the chain for what is called extrascheduler consideration. So even if your numbers are a little short, if your conditions genuinely keep you from working, there is still a path. It is harder, it takes more evidence, but it exists, and almost nobody talks about it. Now some of you are thinking, why bother with all of this? I will just keep filing increases until I hit 100% on my own. Let me tell you the problem with that plan. Climbing to a scheduler 100% means stacking up enough individual ratings that the combined math actually reaches 100, and the VA combined rating system is brutal. It is not simple addition. Because of the way they combine your percentages, going from 80 to 90 to 100 can take years and a whole pile of new conditions, and a lot of veterans never get there, no matter how legitimate their disabilities are. Unemployability is the path the system built for exactly those people, the ones who are plainly unable to work, but whose rating math stalls out in the 80s or 90s. You do not have to win the math. You have to show that you cannot work. Let me stop here and rehook you, because something just changed in the real world that makes this more urgent, not less, and I want you to understand the timing. Right now, as of this recording, there is a bill moving through the House of Representatives that would change who can get this benefit. I want to be very careful and very honest with you because I am not in the business of scaring veterans with fake deadlines. This is a proposed bill. It is not law. It is not passed. But it has been introduced, and here is what it would do. It would take this unemployability benefit, which right now lives in VA regulations, and it would write it directly into federal statute. And it would add something that is not there today. It would bar new unemployability awards for veterans who are 67 years or older at the time they first apply, starting at the end of December. Veterans already receiving the benefit before that date would be protected, but new applicants over that age could be shut out. Again, that is a bill, not a law, and it may never pass. But think about what it tells you. Remember that third myth, the one about being too old? The direction of the wind in Washington is toward putting an age cap on this benefit, not removing one. So if you are an older veteran who has been sitting on this, telling yourself you will get to it next year, understand that the rules that are generous to you today are exactly the rules somebody is trying to narrow. The cheapest time to file was years ago. The second cheapest time is now, while the door is as wide as it is. Therefore, let me get to the part I promised you at the very beginning, the form. Because knowing you qualify does nothing if the paperwork never gets filed. And this is precisely where the money disappears. The form is called VA Form 218940. The full name is Application for Increased Compensation Based on Unemployability. That is, the form most veterans never file, because most veterans never knew it existed as its own separate thing. You do not get this benefit by hoping the VA notices you cannot work. You get it by filing that form and telling them directly. In a lot of cases, the VA also asks for a companion form, VA Form 214192, which gathers information from your former employers about why you stopped working. Those two forms together are how you formally make the claim. Now, before you file anything, there is a small move that can protect a large amount of money, and I want to plant it now because we are going to need it in a second when we talk about back pay. There is a thing called an intent to file. You can notify the VA that you intend to file a claim on its own simple form, and that locks in your effective date for up to a year while you gather your evidence. Hold that thought because it is about to matter a great deal. Here is where the second pile of money is hiding, the one almost nobody plans for, back pay. When the VA grants unemployability, they do not just start your bigger check going forward. They assign an effective date, and that effective date can reach back to when the evidence shows you actually became unable to work. The rules on effective dates live in the regulations too, and they allow your award to go back to your date of claim, and in some cases even earlier, back to when it became factually clear that you could not hold gainful work, as long as that falls within the window the rules allow. And this is exactly why that intent to file matters. The day you file that intent to file is the day your clock can start, even if it takes you months to pull all your evidence together. Veterans who skip that step can lose months of back pay for no reason other than not knowing the step existed. Let me make that concrete. Veterans are very often granted this benefit years after they first became unable to work. When that happens, the back pay is not a few $100s. It is that $1,500 or $1,600 monthly gap, multiplied by every month going back to your effective date. 2 years of back pay at $1,600 a month is over $38,000. 3 years is more than $57,000. For a lot of families, that is a paid-off vehicle, a wiped-out credit card, or the cushion that finally lets them breathe. I am not promising you a specific number, because your effective date depends on your specific evidence and your specific file, and only your claim can determine that. But I am telling you that the veterans who file are routinely surprised by how far back it reaches, and the veterans who never file get exactly 0.
So what actually wins these claims, since I have got you this far? Because filing the form is necessary, but it is not the whole game. The strongest unemployability claims do 3 things. First, they connect the dots in writing between your service-connected conditions and your inability to work, and the most powerful way to do that is a written opinion from a doctor or a vocational expert who lays out, in plain terms, why your specific conditions prevent specific kinds of work. Second, they tell the story of your work history honestly, what jobs you held, why you left them, how your conditions made you unreliable or unable to keep up, which is exactly what that employer form is for. Third, they bring in the people around you. Statements from a spouse, from former coworkers, from a supervisor, describing what they actually saw. The missed days, the breakdowns, the times you had to leave early carry real weight. The VA calls those lay statements, and a good one can be the difference in a close case.
Let me give you one more example, because I want the older veterans watching to see themselves in this. Picture a veteran in his 60s. Years ago, he filed for an increase, got told no, and he never went back. He has been sitting at 70% ever since, assuming that was the ceiling. He is not bedridden, he putters around the house, he drives himself to the store, but he has not been able to hold a steady job in years because his conditions flare up and he cannot be relied on to show up day after day. Under the rule we just walked through, that man is not stuck at 70%. He was a candidate for the 100% payment the entire time, and every month he waited was a month of that gap he will never get back, because back pay only reaches back so far. Do not be that veteran.
And there is something most people do not realize about this benefit, a benefit hiding behind the benefit.
When the VA grants unemployability and finds that your condition is not expected to improve, they can rate you permanent and total. That status is not just a bigger check. In a lot of cases, it can open doors that have nothing to do with your monthly payment. It can make your dependents eligible for education benefits. It can open up healthcare coverage for your family through the program called CHAMPVA. And in many states, a permanent and total rating unlocks a property tax exemption on your home that can be worth thousands of dollars a year all by itself. I am not going to promise you any one of those because each program has its own rules and every state is its own animal. But understand that the unemployability claim is often the key that unlocks a whole hallway of doors, not just one.
So what happens after you file? I do not want the process to scare you off, so let me tell you what to expect. After you submit, the VA will usually schedule what is called a compensation and pension exam. A clinician looks at your conditions and answers questions about how they affect your ability to work. This is not the enemy. Show up, be honest, and do not tough it out and minimize your symptoms the way a lot of us were trained to do, because this is the one place where downplaying it actually costs you money. Describe your worst days, not your best ones, because the VA needs to understand what you look like when it is bad, not when you are putting on a brave face. Your accredited officer can tell you exactly how to prepare for that exam, which is one more reason to have one in your corner. And if you file and you get denied, hear me on this. That is not the end of the road. I do not want you to read a denial as a final answer, because it is not. The VA has a whole appeals process. You can file what is called a supplemental claim with new evidence. You can ask for a higher level review by a more senior reviewer. You can take it all the way to the Board of Veterans' Appeals if you have to. Plenty of unemployability awards that are paying veterans right now started life as a denial that somebody simply refused to accept. So if the first answer is no, you bring better evidence and you go again, and you do not do it alone, because that same free accredited officer handles the appeal too. Now let me close the loop I opened at the start, because I told you I would.
The reason the VA almost never says the name of that form out loud is not some grand conspiracy. It is simpler, and in a way, it is worse. The system is built to respond to what you claim, not to volunteer what you are entitled to. The VA processes the claim in front of it. If you filed for a rating increase on your knee, they rate your knee. If you never filed the unemployability form, there is no unemployability claim for them to grant, so the bigger check never even gets considered. The money is not denied, it is just never requested. That is why most veterans never claim it, not because they were turned down, because they never knew to ask. So here is exactly what to do, step by step, and then I'm going to point you somewhere free and I'm going to stop talking. Step 1. Pull up your current rating decision and find two things. Find your combined rating and find the rating on each individual condition. You are looking to see if you have one condition at 60% or higher or one condition at 40% or higher with a combined rating of 70 or higher. Step 2. Ask yourself honestly whether your service-connected conditions are the reason you cannot hold down steady, full-time, gainful work. Not whether you are a hard worker, not whether you are tough. Whether the conditions the VA already connected to your service are what stand between you and a real paycheck. Step 3. If you think there is any chance you are a candidate, consider filing that intent to file right away to start your clock, before you even have all your evidence together. A day on the calendar can be worth thousands of dollars in back pay. Step 4. Do not file this alone if you do not have to, and do not pay anybody to do it. There are people whose entire job is to help you file this for free. They are called accredited Veterans Service Officers. The VFW has them. The DAV has them. The American Legion has them. Your county and your state veterans offices have them. And you can find an accredited representative for free through the va.gov accredited representative search. They will help you complete that 218940, gather the evidence, line up the right opinions, and file it correctly, and it will not cost you anything. Anybody who tries to charge you a fee just to file your initial claim is somebody to walk away from. The free accredited people exist for exactly this. Use them. That is the whole thing. One rule, written in the regulations, that pays you at the 100% rate without a 100% rating. One form most veterans never file. An intent to file that starts your back pay clock the day you submit it, and a back pay clock that has been running this entire time. Go find a free accredited veteran service officer, bring them your rating decision, and ask them one question. Am I a candidate for individual unemployability? Then let them do the rest.